Haven't you ever seen a Cary Grant movie? Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City. And today we are going to be doing an audio commentary for the 1963 film For Love or Money, starring Kirk Douglas, Mitzi Gaynor, Gig Young, and distributed by Universal, directed by Michael Gordon. And this is a film that is, I'm going to say right now, this is the 11th commentary in a series of commentaries that I'm doing in honor of Mitzi Gaynor and her filmography. She just turned 92 earlier this week. And this is, like I said, this is the 11th commentary, but it's also the commentary for her, what I think is her worst film. This is the nadir of Mitzi's filmography, to be very honest, and I'm sure she would agree with me. I mean, I would, if I was a gambling man, I would definitely put money on that she would definitely agree that this is her worst film, but not her fault. Obviously, this is not. I mean, this is something I don't blame on Mitzi whatsoever. But just to warn you up front, if you do decide to seek this film out, the truth of the matter is, I mean, I know it's weird because I'm about to do this audio commentary. And I'm telling you right now that, well, you know, you probably don't want to waste any money on this movie, to be perfectly honest. In fact, I mean, I didn't even bother checking at Amazon to see if it was actually available. Allow me to do that real quick before we press play. And just to let you know right now, after this commentary is done, there'll be 6 left. I will be doing those all next week, 2 a day, 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. We have a lot of reading material we got to catch up on, and that's what I intend to do. Yes. So after double checking, yeah, For Love or Money is not available at Amazon. And from what I remember, there's not even a copy uploaded to YouTube, but because, like I said, it's been a while since I first watched this, I will double check for anybody, because the only way you can watch this is by DVD. Well, that is a joke. The opening titles are available on YouTube, but not the movie. So you can't watch the movie on YouTube either. There are other movies called For Love or Money that are available, like the one with Michael J. Fox, which has nothing to do with this, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, so after confirming all that, it's official that For Love or Money is not available on Amazon. It is not available on YouTube. And the only way that you could watch For Love or Money is on this Universal DVD. And so I'm going to basically try. This is going to be one of those commentaries where I'm well aware that I'm only recording this for maybe 2 or 3 people in the world, because it's only available on DVD. That's it. It's not available for streaming anywhere. It's not available on YouTube for free. Nothing. So with this DVD, we're gonna cut. And I, for a while, I was thinking maybe I shouldn't even bother doing For Love or Money, because the thing is, I mean, I figured I would only have maybe 20 minutes of stuff to say on it at first, because it's that bad. And then I thought, you know what? I could just talk about Mitzi Gaynor's career after this, from 1963 to the present day, 2023. That's what we could do in as a supplement to the commentary for Love or Money, because I'm predicting, and this is just me, but I'm predicting that 50% of this is going to be on For Love or Money, and the other 50% is going to be on her career post after doing 17 films, which is mostly, like I said, stage shows, Vegas shows, and the TV specials, which we have another DVD we will be talking about, which blows the Universal DVD out of the water. Mitzi Gaynor, Razzle, Dazzle, the special years. So we're going to be talking about both of these during this commentary, because there's no way in hell I can talk about For Love or Money in just, I need something else. And that DVD with all those Mitzi Gaynor specials, that's what we're going to talk about for the latter half of this commentary. So at any rate, so we're paused on the Universal International logo. Here again, the only way you can watch this is via a DVD. And I got my DVD, and I intend to get rid of it as soon as possible afterward. But let's just do this. So we're paused on the very colorful Universal International logo. Edward Mule in charge of production. Already, when I see a producer's name in the opening credit right next to the studio logo, really? Yeah, exactly. So sound is off. So we will press play on the count of 3, 2, 1, and play. Yeah. The logo is gorgeous. Okay, it's one of the few things in this movie that I like, is that the Universal International logo is gorgeous in color. So, and we got these opening credits, which are not nearly as stylish or clever that I think the filmmakers intended, but we see the actors' names plastered on these chessboard pieces, and they're completely stationary. They don't. They just have these really goofy expressions on their faces for love or money. And look, admittedly, the title sequence is colorful. It reminds me of maybe, like some of those spy comedies of the 1960s, and how they made fun of James Bond and everything. It had this type of thing. But as we move in, because admittedly, you get past the title sequence, and it's like, okay, that's not too bad. But then we get into the film and we realize, oh no, this is very, very tacky. It promises, style, and it promises plushness almost with the sets and the costumes, but everything is just kind of feels recycled, and it feels almost like leftovers. It feels, like I said, we're going to be criticizing this movie quite a bit for many, many reasons. Chiefly of which it just wastes this cast. This is a very, very fine cast. I mean, we have Kirk Douglas, who had not really done comedy before. He had done a couple of comedy movies, but this was really a test after all his heroic roles and Western roles to see if he could really carry a romantic comedy. So it was really, that's the whole point of this movie's existence, is to test Kirk Douglas when it came to romantic comedy. Yeah, directed by Michael Gordon. We will talk about him a bit later. He has directed a couple of classics, believe it or not. Now, this is ridiculous. San Francisco, 115 years after the Gold Rush. The Gold Rush has nothing to do with this movie. And also it cuts to a shot of a sailboat. Some found it, some are still looking. Those two, they have nothing to do with the story whatsoever. They do not. It's not like an introduction of a theme or anything. And here we have a bird on a sailboat waking Kirk Douglas up as he is apparently just enjoying a Sunday sail, with some lovely ladies. And he has a heart on his chest that says "Deke me." Yeah, his name is Deke. So already I don't like the fact that in the logo that we have to see the producer's name, or the man in charge of production, excuse me. And now in this scene, we have the lead character just has his name on his chest. And I don't know if that's supposed to be whipped cream or shaving cream. I don't know exactly what that is. It's and here we have Thelma Ritter. Here again, brace yourself. This movie is going to waste a lot of wonderful actors. But yeah, here's Kirk Douglas wiping whatever was on his chest off. And he's calling up to, yeah, one of my friends, I need to mention this. One of my friends pointed out when I loaned him this DVD to watch, he said, he didn't hear the helicopter until it was right above him. Yeah. He had no idea that a helicopter was coming. it's, I mean, and it's just moving on. You're going to see more and more how artificial this movie is. It's artificial. This is not even formulaic. This movie gives formula a bad name. It really does. It's beyond formulaic and generic. It's completely lifeless. There's no energy. There's no cleverness, no wit. This script is one of the worst romantic comedy scripts I've ever heard in my life. And that's saying a lot considering all of the flush down the toilet members of the genre that we get every other month in the Cineplex nowadays. That's saying a lot right there. And when you waste such legendary actors like, Thelma, Ritter, and Kirk Douglas, and Julie Newmar, and of course Mitzi Gaynor, all of them. I mean, when you waste all of them, you did something really, really wrong. You did something so wrong, and that's what I'm saying. This is an epic failure for a romantic comedy. This is an absolute epic failure, and we'll lay out other reasons why this really delves into the worst levels that you could imagine that the genre could hold. I mean, I was surprised at how bad this was the first time I watched it. I really was. I was really, really shocked at how bad this movie was. I mean, forget the fact that there was no laughs in it. I mean, to quote Rich Evans from Red Letter Media, this is a non-Medi. It feels like a comedy that's almost it kills laughter. It's like kryptonite to laughter. Now, here is a temporary distraction. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the gorgeous, gorgeous Julie Newmar. Also still with us. Mitzi Gaynor is still with us, and Julie Newmar is still with us. Just turned 90 years old, I believe. And yeah, and she is as stunning as ever in this movie. I mean, she's always been stunning. But of course, for someone like me and for millions of other people that, we grew up on the Batman television show from the 1960s. So this was 3 years before that Batman show. This was 3 years before she was cast as the first Catwoman on the 1960s series. And she had the most seductive ways of getting into that feline costume and that character. It was unbelievable. Now, sadly, she isn't used much in this movie because we have to give way to lame comedy like this bit right here, where, the muscle man in the room is like, hey, you don't want to make her upset. And Kirk Douglas keeps looking back at him and just basically runs into a bunch of dumbbells. And he's touching his forehead to let, he like banged his head against something. Like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I realized quickly, it's like, oh, this is going to be the level of humor. It's going to be this dumb. It's going to be this dumb, this lame. Oh no. Oh no. And look, I have nothing but respect for Kirk Douglas. And when I saw this film, when I ordered this DVD from Universal because I was going to start this Mitzi Gaynor project, when I first watched this, I was thinking, this can't be that bad. The cast is too good. It looks like a decent, lightweight romantic comedy from the early 60s. You don't take it too seriously. You just go with the flow. You have fun with it. And when I watched it, I had almost zero reaction. It was really weird. It was like, okay, it's not even fascinating on the level. I mean, the novelty, there was only one novelty to watching For Love and Money. When I saw it a couple of years ago for the first time, there was only one novelty to it. Seeing Kirk Douglas, Julie Newmar, and Mitzi Gaynor in this movie, and they're all still alive. I watched this before Kirk Douglas passed in 2020, and that's what kept on going through my mind as I was watching this. Like, wow! And then I started to think I would rather watch anything else with Kirk and Julie and Mitzi, because this is in my opinion, this is an embarrassment, because My theory, and this is, I couldn't really find any hard proof on this, but my theory is that this movie was written as a vehicle for Doris Day and Rock Hudson. The director, Gordon Douglas, had done Pillow Talk, which is one of the two classics that I mentioned earlier. The other one being Cyrano de Bergerac, because that won Jose Fair his Academy Award for Best Actor. So Gordon Douglas has directed two key films of the 1950s, Cyrano de Bergerac and Pillow Talk. Now, this movie I can see was probably most likely written for Doris Day and Rock Hudson. And I wouldn't be surprised if they themselves rejected it. But ladies and gentlemen, we now have the lovely Mitzi Gaynor in a nice yellow dress. Her hair is a bit longer this time. She has a much different appearance that she did in the previous films, where she had that that short hair and everything. Ever since South Pacific, I mean, like I said, she only made 3 movies after South Pacific, and this was, here again, the last one. And it's just so bizarre, this coming out at this stage in her film career, and ultimately her stage career. And it's just a shame that after South Pacific, that she didn't get another opportunity. But you could make the argument that she had reached the zenith with South Pacific. I mean, she wasn't going to go anywhere else but down. And there is a scene later, we'll talk more about Mitzi later, because there's a scene later where she does emote in this film, and it's wonderful. But at the same time, this movie also disrespects her to a certain extent, considering how many times she has a chance to shine and we just leave her on the set. And you'll see what I'm saying. This is a running gag, in what is supposed to be, a comedy that I guess is inspired by the 30s screwball films. I mean, when I saw this, I didn't think this was going to be like a Doris Day, Rock Hudson thing. I thought this was going to be something more generic and something more predictable. And it wasn't necessarily predictable, but at the same time, it had this weird vibe where, okay, what's an excuse to get him away from her? Okay, the phone rings. And then they do that like 6 times in the movie. And I just thought, well, wait a minute, is this supposed to be where the laughter is? Is this supposed to be where the comedy is supposed to be, that he keeps on getting phone calls and that he can't entertain Mitzi Gaynor, also because of his position as a lawyer? So yeah, I mean, what's this movie about? Let's get that out of the way first, because the first time I saw this movie, I was really, really confused. I was really, honestly, very, very confused. But I'm going to let my friend John Siruga, courtesy of Twitter, to give us the synopsis that he wrote, which I think is perfectly written. Starring Kirk Douglas, Mitzi Gaynor, Gig Young, Thelma Ritter, William Bendix, Julie Newmar, and Leslie Parrish, one would think For Love or Money would be worth the peek if only to see this cast in action. What's the movie about? It's 108 minutes long, written by Larry Marks and Michael Morris, and directed by Michael Gordon. For Love or Money is Universal Studios plush, i.e. tacky. We completely agreed with each other about the tackiness of this movie. And there's John right there. Yes, I have to call you out, sir. I have to, we have to trump on this film together. We really, really do. Frantic like a 30s comedy, but badly in need of Cary Grant, who I'm afraid couldn't do much with the script. And I opened this commentary with exactly that quote. I mean, what do you think this is, a Cary Grant movie? This movie wishes it was a Cary Grant movie. The movie begins with Thelma Ritter in a helicopter hovering over Douglas's sailboat and shouting orders at him through a speaker, sunning himself with a broad on deck. Douglas doesn't even hear the helicopter until it's right above them. Kirk is an attorney. Ritter is a rich battle axe with 3 nubile daughters. Perfect use of the word nubile, sir. Thank you. And for some reason, she wants him to play matchmaker so her children don't wind up married to beatniks. Gordon keeps Douglas leaping about, constantly answering ringing telephones and juggling conquests. The oddest attempt matchup may be a statuesque Newmar with Dick Sargent as a tax investigator. Gaynor plays this juvenile fare very low-keyed and on the seductive side, but she's continually being stood up or put on hold. Boom, right there. And like I said, even if it's a running gag, it's a very, very annoying and frustrating running gag. And one's ache for her to do this quiet come on in a different picture. How bad is For Love or Money? After an hour, all I could concentrate on were the decorations in the various apartments and wondering if it was actually just one set being systematically redressed. 100%. I think he sums it better than anybody else could, whether it's 1963 or today. Now, look, before we, with our thundercloud coming into full gear here on For Love or Money, I'm going to say, look, up front, there are people out there that probably like this movie. In fact, I know for a fact there are people out there that like this movie. There are 7 reviews at IMDb, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, all 7 are positive. Now, I'm not sure. The thing is that, look, comedy is all subjective. Romantic comedies it's a lightweight genre by nature. This was never meant to be Roman Holiday, but it was obviously trying to be pillow talk or a variation of pillow talk. It's already calling to mind a much better movie, which is a problem, especially one that just came out 4 years prior to this. See, now look at this set right here. You would think that all this could be easily taken off the set and all the other paintings could come in and like, these are the apartments. This is the next apartment. This is an office building. Yeah, this feels like a movie that was made in a Universal closet. I don't know if I can think of a better description than that. Yeah, despite the fact, okay, you have these paintings right here, and I have something to say about the paintings, actually, because there's only one trivia bit on this movie at IMDb, and I want to get this out of the way right now. Director Michael Gordon had a superstition that made him put at least one of his favorite paintings by Edgar O. Keighley into each film he directed. While one was being placed on the wall behind Kirk Douglas, Douglas quipped, quote, "I've worked with a lot of tough directors, but he's the first one who's ever insisted on holding something over an actor's head." That is the only trivia I have on For Love or Money, to be perfectly honest. Because that's the thing, is that this movie, it probably made a small profit. I mean, I think it made like 1.6 million in August of 63. And this was obviously, I think, meant to be counter-programming to some of the other releases that were during that month. And but it's also noteworthy that Gordon Douglas would have another film be released by 20th Century Fox later in the year called Move Over Darling, which started out as Something's Gotta Give with Marilyn Monroe. So, and that did very, very well for 20th Century Fox and director Gordon Douglas. But aside from those key films, Gordon Douglas didn't really direct any other stuff of note. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yes, I already screwed that up. Mm-hmm. Michael Gordon. I knew that I was going to get Michael Gordon and Gordon Douglas. Gordon Douglas is another director. Yeah. No, I knew I was going to get them confused at some point. Okay. So Michael Gordon, he was born in Baltimore, Maryland. He was a member of the Group Theater from 1935 to 1940 and was blacklisted as a communist in the McCarthy era. He later joined the faculty of the UCLA theater department. Gordon summered at Pine Brook Country Club in Nichols, Connecticut, and Pine Brook is best known for becoming the summer home of the group theater. Now, as a result of being blacklisted, Gordon's Hollywood career fell into two phases. In 1940, he started as a dialogue director and directed B movies. In the late 40s, he distinguished himself by directing action movies, melodramas, and films noir. And among those movies include Boston Blackie Goes Hollywood, One Dangerous Night, Crime Doctor, The Web, An Act of Murder, The Lady Gambles, Once More My Darling, and Woman in Hiding, which had Ida Lupino in it. And this was after she became a director herself. Like he also worked with Robert Montgomery as well as Robert Preston. So he worked with stars. He just did a lot of B pictures. He made two films with Frederick March as well. But it wasn't until 1950 with his adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac, which it was a hit. Jose Fer won the Oscar for that film, produced by Stanley Kramer and distributed by United Artists. And it's mainly remembered for Jose Fer's performance. As he's the guy with the big nose and he's in love with a woman, but she's attracted to somebody else for obvious reasons. But he decides to act as like a coach and eventual, basically just standing in for him in terms of giving her poems, and poetry and beautiful romantic sonnets and stuff like that, and just romancing her. And yet at the same time, the one that's actually winning her heart and being with her is the man that she actually likes. So, but it's a classic story. They did another adaptation like a couple of years ago with the guy from Game of Thrones. But my favorite version will always be Roxanne with Steve Martin. Look, yeah, there's many adaptations of Cyrano de Bergerac out there, but my favorite will always be Roxanne. Just pointing that out. Michael Gordon, he would also direct I Can Get It For You Wholesale, not to be confused with the short story that inspired Blade Runner. But this movie came out in 1951 and stars Susan Hayward and produced by Saul C. Siegel, who would produce several of Mitzi's movies as well. And in 1951, he also directed The Secret of Convict Lake with Glenn Ford, Gene Tierney, and Ethel Barrymore. Mm-hmm. And after that, he would direct his second classic, Pillow Talk, which was a huge hit for Universal Pictures. Here again, going back to Universal, that's why I can't help but get the feeling that this script was meant for Rock Hudson and Doris Day. And it also had Thelma Ritter, of all people. So there you go. To me, it seems way too obvious. It seems way too obvious. And I'd like to think that Rock Hudson and Doris Day looked at the script and said, no, thank you. Because there's not anything funny in this movie. I did not laugh once. I did not laugh once at this. Now, after Pillow Talk, he did Portrait in Black in 1960, starring Lana Turner and Anthony Quinn. And then he did Boys Night Out, 1962, starring Kim Novak and James Garner. And then finally, he would do Move Over, Darling, with Doris Day and James Garner. And Move Over, Darling was a hit. It was a huge hit for 20th Century Fox. It had a budget of $3.35 million, and it made $12.7 million. So Fox, regardless on how you feel about Marilyn and Something's Got to Give, I mean, they went through with it because they knew that they were going to make money off of this. So yeah, Doris Day, James Garner, Thelma Ritter is also in this, Chuck Connors, and Don Knotts. I'm almost tempted to watch Move Over, Darling now, based on that cast. I mean, John, do you recommend Move Over, Darling? Let me ask you that. Now, after For Love or Money, Gordon Douglas would only make... excuse me. There it goes again. Michael Gordon, not Gordon Douglas. That's going to be the last time. Michael Gordon, who directed For Love or Money, only made 4 movies after For Love or Money. They include A Very Special Favor, Texas Across the River, The Impossible Years, and his last film was in 1970 called How Do I Love Thee, starring Jackie Gleason and Maureen O'Hara. And A Very Special Favor had Rock Hudson and Leslie Caron. Texas Across the River had Dean Martin. And The Impossible Years had David Niven. And of course, David Niven had just worked with Mitzi Gaynor on 2 films, The Birds and the Bees and Happy Anniversary. So, and the other thing that should be mentioned is that Gordon and his wife, Elizabeth Cohn, had 3 children, Jonathan, Jane, who is the mother of actor Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yes. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who actually directed a film himself, he actually did end up directing one movie called Don John, where he plays this womanizer who is addicted to the adult film industry on the internet. I'm not going to use the P word just because I don't want to. I just don't want to use it on a commentary like this. Let's put it that way. I just don't feel it's appropriate. But but yeah, he later directed a movie called Don John, which is actually pretty good. But here again, when it comes to Michael Gordon's filmography, the only 2 that stand out are Cyrano de Bergerac and Pillow Talk, and Move Over Darling to an extent, even though that, it's technically just Something's Gotta Give revamped, which, you knew Fox was going to do anyway. But, yeah. So overall, a rather lackluster filmography, with a couple of exceptions. But so yeah, here we have Thelma Ritter coming in with this, this pink doohickey in her hair. Now, okay, now this actor that just picked up the phone right here, this is in fact Dick Sargent from I Dream of Jeannie, and we will talk about him a little bit later. But I wanted to get the writers out of the way first, because we've already talked about the director. Let's talk about the writers of what is possibly one of the worst scripts from the 1960s. This feels like a script that just was in a drawer for 20 years. That's the thing. That's the thing about For Love or Money. So there's 2 writers on For Love or Money. There's Larry Marks, who was born in Brooklyn. Soon after graduating from the University of Miami, he started setting lyrics to the melody of another young songwriter called Dick Charles. Their first hit was Mad About Him, Sad About Him, How Can I Be Glad Without Him Blues, 1942, which Dinah Shore recorded successfully for Columbia Records. During World War II, Marks was in the United States Army Air Forces, left the service in 1945, returning to New York, and his songwriting collaboration with Charles. They wrote Along the Navajo Trail with Eddie DeLong, which was recorded by Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters, Dinah Shore, and the Gene Krupa Band. Other songs include I Tip My Hat and Slowly Rode Away, It Takes a Long, Long Train with a Red Caboose to Carry My Blues Away, and May You Always. But his biggest hit was IOU, co-written and sung by Jimmy Dean, which sold more than 1 million copies. IOU is a son's acknowledgement of the debts he owes his mother and is frequently played by radio stations on Mother's Day. Marks also began writing continuity for radio programs. After moving to Los Angeles in the 1960s, he turned to screenwriting, including For Love or Money and Wild and Wonderful, which starred Tony Curtis in 1965. He also wrote the television series Bonanza, Love American Style, McHale's Navy, The Flintstones, Room for One More, My Three Sons, Jonathan Winters, and I Dream of Jeannie. There we go. Marks died in L.A. in May of 1999 at the age of 77. And the other writer is a man by the name of Michael Morris. And he immigrated to the United States at the age of 5 in 1923. Began his career acting with his father, Nathan, as a child and appearing on a WEBD radio show in New York City and in several Yiddish-speaking films. During World War II, he served in the United States Army and then went back to New York City to write on the radio programs Mr. and Mrs. North and The Hollywood Story. In 1960, Morris moved to Los Angeles, California to continue his work in film and television, which began in 1953 retiring in 1980. Morris, who lived over the long course of his career in Hollywood, which spanned a period of 4 decades from the early 1950s to the early 1980s, wrote episodes for such popular TV series as The Andy Griffith Show, Bewitched, McHale's Navy, F Troop, Sanford and Son, The Brady Bunch, and All in the Family. His film writing credits include the made-for-TV films We'll Take Manhattan and Second Chance, and the films Wild and Wonderful and For Love or Money. He passed away in 2003 at the age of 85. Yep. So, yeah, and you would think, I mean, there's no musical numbers in this film. This is a rare Mitzi Gaynor movie where there's just no musical numbers. There is a score. There is a rather irritating score, I think, which I think is a little too silly and just, dare I say it, just, annoying. It doesn't help the scene at all. I mean, it's trying to be playful, but no, I found I couldn't stand the score in this movie. It's one of the things that upset me the most, to be perfectly honest. In fact, let's go ahead and get the music out of the way. Let's go ahead and get the music out of the way. But so the music for this film was courtesy of Frank Duvall, who was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, although I would venture that this is probably his worst score. I'm just throwing that out there right now. But he was an actor specializing in deadpan comic characters, especially as the dour band leader Happy Kine on the talk show parodies Fernwood Tonight and America Tonight in 77 to 78. He also had a recurring role in I'm Dickens. He's Fenster as Myron Bannister, Dickens and Fenster's boss, and appeared on the Cara Williams Show, I Dream of Jeannie, Gidget, Bonanza, Petticoat Junction, Mickey starring Mickey Rooney, The Brady Bunch, Get Smart, The Jeffersons. He also had comic roles as Chief Englewood, the head of the Thundercloud Boys Camp in The Parent Trap. I knew I saw Frank Duvall's name somewhere. It was on the Parent Trap credits. Yeah, it was on the Parent Trap. Yeah. Thank you so much, John. Yes, I am confusing I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched again. I always get them confused because they always played back to back with each other, and they're practically the same show. I mean, yes, I think they are practically the same show. Yes, the premises are different, but come on. I mean, woman has magical powers, all that, yeah. But yes, Dick Sargent was the second Darren on Bewitched. We'll get to him later. We'll definitely get to him later. But Duvall appeared as a band leader in the last season of My Three Sons, in addition to writing the theme music and serving as in-house composer for most of the show's 12 seasons. He also scored most episodes of Family Affair, including many of the same incidental music used as My Three Sons. In 1980, he appeared in the second season of Different Strokes, and he also preferred to be credited as Frank Duvall for his acting appearances and as Duvall for his musical work. And he passed away in 1999 at the age of 88. I knew I saw his name somewhere. And I've seen Parent Trap plenty of times that now it's clicking for me. Oh, yes. Chief Englewood, where he didn't remove his napkin from his chest when he stood up while he was eating. He just wanted to continue his meal. He was like, I wasn't ready to talk yet. I'm still eating here. But yeah. So where are we here? Okay, so we're at the 33-minute mark. We're at the 33-minute mark of For Love or Money. And let's see. We haven't talked about Leslie Parrish yet, who plays Jan Brasher. See, that's the thing. Leslie Parrish and Julie Newmar play the other two daughters to Thelma Ritter, with Mitzi Gaynor being the eldest and the one who is obviously going to end up with our quote unquote hero at the end of the movie. But yeah, for the other Brasher daughters, we have Julie Newmar and Leslie Parrish. Now, I'm going to start with Leslie Parrish for the simple reason that she was nominated for a Golden Globe for this movie, believe it or not, this movie actually got nominated for something. And she's barely in the movie. She's barely in the movie. It's kind of a mystery to me as to how she got that nomination. But in April of 1954, as a 19-year-old model with the Conover Agency in New York City, Parrish was under contract to NBC TV as Miss Color TV. She was used during broadcasts as a human test pattern to check accuracy of skin tones. Got to start somewhere. She was quickly discovered and signed with 20th Century Fox in Hollywood. Oh, so she signed up right when Mitzi Gaynor left Fox. Wow. Yeah, she signed to Fox basically right after Mitzi left. And then in 1956, she was put under contract to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. And here again, Mitzi made a movie at MGM called Les Girls. Because acting allowed her to help her family financially, she remained in Hollywood and gave up her career in music. She co-starred, guest starred in numerous films and TV shows throughout the 60s and 70s. She appeared in the film The Manchurian Candidate, which is probably her most famous work, playing Lawrence Harvey's on-screen fiancée, Jocelyn Jordan. Other film credits include Kirk, starring opposite Kirk Douglas in For Love or Money, and Jerry Lewis in Three on a Couch. Parrish amassed an extensive resume of TV credits: Wild Wild West, My Three Sons, Perry Mason, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Adam 12, Star Trek in the season 2 episode entitled Who Mourns for Adonias. She portrayed Lieutenant Carolyn Palamas, the love interest of the character Apollo, played by Michael Forrest. In February of 1968, she played opposite Peter Breck in an episode of The Big Valley entitled A Bounty on a Barkley. In the following month, Parrish made her first guest appearance on Mannix in the episode The Girl in the Frame. She served as associate producer on the film version of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I've never seen that. I've always been kind of interested in it. Among other things, she hired the director of photography, Jack Kufer, who later received an Academy Award nomination for his efforts, and she was responsible for the care of the film's real-life seagulls. Actually, there's a seagull that wakes up Kirk Douglas in the beginning, so there you go. Which she kept inside a room at the Holiday Inn in Carmel, California for the duration of the shoot. When the relationship between author Richard Bach and director Hal Bartlett disintegrated and a lawsuit followed, Parrish was appointed as the mediator between the two men, but the mediation failed, just like For Love or Money. Ultimately, the film was released in theaters with Bach's name taken off the screenwriting credits, while Bartlett demoted Parrish's credit in the finished film from associate producer to researcher. Now, you know how she ended up her film career? Well, she started out at 20th Century Fox doing films like The Virgin Queen, A Man Called Peter, and Daddy Longlegs, as well as How to Be Very, Very Popular, which was the very last film for Betty Grable. Not just at Fox, but period. And then when he went to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, made 3 films there. Then he jumped around from Paramount to Warner Brothers to United Artists for ultimately The Manchurian Candidate. And then he did Sex and the Single Girl for Warner Brothers, which of course was based on the book by Helen Gurley Brown. And one of her last films, ladies and gentlemen, was the legendary classic, The Giant Spider Invasion. Yes, directed by Bill Rebane and filmed on location in Wisconsin. It is a classic up there with Citizen Kane, and you all should see it. And, well, certainly much more of a classic than For Love or Money. I mean, come on. Come on, give me a break here. Okay, let's get to Dick Sargent, who's coming in here, and Julie Newmar, of course, looks magnificent. But here again, there's very little of her. I mean, her and Leslie Parrish disappear by the 70-minute mark. There's really very little for them to do in this movie, which here again is just yet another disappointment in the list of disappointments that I had about this movie. Here again, this is the only movie that Mitzi Gaynor made that I can safely say that I hate, and I never ever want to see again. But let's move on to Dick Sargent here. So he plays Harvey Wofford. Okay. Dick Sargent was born in 1930, passed away in 1994 at the age of 64. He attended San Rafael Military Academy in San Rafael, California, and majored in drama at Stanford. And then he appeared in feature films such as Prisoner of War, which was his film debut in 1954. Then he followed that with A Great Locomotive Chase in 1956, starring Fess Parker. And then in the 1957 movie Bernadine, Sargent played Sanford Fofo Wilson. Sargent appeared in the 1959 feature film Operation Petticoat, starring Cary Grant, and The Ghost of Mr. Chicken, starring Don Knotts, in 1966. He was a regular in 3 short-lived television comedies. And then in 1975, he appeared on the television show Tattletales with Fannie Flagg. His later movies included the crime drama Hardcore as Jake Van Dorn's straight-laced brother-in-law, Wes DeJong, and as Dr. Jameson in the sci-fi horror film Parts the Clonus Horror, which was done as, along with The Giant Spider Invasion, was immortalized by Mystery Science Theater 3000. And he also played Sheriff Grady Bird in 2 1979-1980 season episodes of The Dukes of Hazzard. Woohoo! And Sargent continued to work in film in films like Live a Little, Love a Little, and a bunch of shows, Love Boat, Fantasy Island, you name it. Throughout the 1980s, he joined actress Sally Struthers as an advocate for Christian Children's Fund, which brought relief to children in developing nations. Also did charitable work for the Special Olympics, World Hunger, AIDS Project Los Angeles, and the American Foundation for AIDS Research. Awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On National Coming Out Day in 1991, Sargent publicly declared his homosexuality and supported gay rights issues. The high rate of suicide among young gay people was the main reason. He jokingly referred to himself as a retroactive role model. Sargent recognized that his ill health from prostate cancer may have led people to assume he suffered from AIDS, but he had a companion with whom he lived with for 20 years before the unidentified man died from a cerebral hemorrhage in 1979. In June of 1992, Sargent was a Grand Marshal of the Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade along with Elizabeth Montgomery. She said upon his death, "He was a great friend, and I will miss his love, his sense of humor, and his remarkable courage." And Montgomery died herself of cancer less than 2 years later. So, yeah, that's Dick Sargent right there. And here again, he just doesn't have much to do in this movie. But okay, now the actor right here with the glasses on, this guy right here playing the role of Sam is an actor by the name of William Wyndham. Okay, he plays Sam Travis in this movie. He was a character actor, well known for his recurring role as Dr. Seth Hazlitt along Angela Lansbury in the CBS mystery series Murder, She Wrote. Ah, I knew he looked familiar. William Wyndham. Oh, no, that should have sparked immediately. Okay, I've seen enough episodes of Murder, She Wrote. That should have sparked immediately. I did not think of it. Oh, also as Duvall, he hit pay dirt with his unctuous score for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Ah, okay. And The Impossible Years is another stinker, though not as bad as Boys Night Out. Oh, and you loved Move Over Darling. Oh, well, maybe I should check out Move Over Darling then. Definitely. So William Wyndham, he also did guest spots in Columbo, Night Gallery, Marcus Welby, Quincy, Magnum PI, Newhart, LA Law, Murphy Brown. Wyndham is also known for his film roles in the Academy Award-winning movie To Kill a Mockingbird, the Americanization of Emily with Julie Andrews, The Detective, Brewster McCloud, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Who does he play in that? She's Having a Baby, Uncle Buck, Miracle on 34th Street. So he did like 4 movies for John Hughes while he was doing Murder, She Wrote. He did like 4 movies with John Hughes. And his last movie was actually True Crime, directed by Clint Eastwood, and that came out in 1999. He passed away in 2012 at the age of 88. Wow, so had he lived, he would be 99 years old today. Wow. Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird was actually his film debut. He played the prosecutor Horace Gilmer. And then in 1963 he did Cattle King, For Love or Money, One Man's Way, and then the Americanization of Emily. He was also in the Mephisto Waltz, Now You See Him, Now You Don't, with Kurt Russell. That's one of those silly Disney movies that Kurt Russell did. He was also in Goodbye Franklin High, Prince Jack, Grandview USA, Space Rage, and Mr. Bryant. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. He was Mr. Bryant. I don't remember. He was uncredited though. He only contributed a voice to Uncle Buck, and he was also but he did actually have a role in She's Having a Baby. And in 1996 he was in Children of the Corn 4: The Gathering, which I'm sure he had very high on his resume. You know, he highlighted that for everybody. He played a doctor in that. It's kind of sad, but then again, I think I'd rather watch Children of the Corn 4 than For Love or Money again. I can't help it. I can't help it. This movie is awful. It's just so bad. So, okay, now, oh God. And see, and that's the thing. Julie Newmar right here, you know, she's only a temporary distraction, and we'll see. It's almost like they push her on screen just to be like, okay, look, you know, here's Julie Newmar. Okay, you know, just focus on Julie Newmar. Don't listen to the dialogue. Don't listen to the horrible dialogue. Just here's Julie Newmar. Just look at her. Look at her. Look at her. Because there's a scene later which actually made my jaw drop the second time because I had forgotten about it. That's how bad it was. That's how bad this movie is. But when she did this, you know, I was kind of like, oh no, they made her do this. It felt like the only reason that they cast her in this role is basically just for her beauty, and it's a little sad. Um, but then again, I mean, look, if you're a Julie Newmar completist, I mean, you know, you might as well pick this up, I guess. But I highly doubt even she herself rates it very highly. I really, really doubt that. Now, now, just to give you an idea about, you know, some of the bad dialogue in this movie, like sounds like a tennis ball bouncing down the stairs. Haven't you ever seen a Cary Grant movie? Yeah, I mentioned that one. We can split a scrambled egg, you know, stuff like that. Smoking a cigar is the equivalent of thumb sucking. I mean, I'm just trying to understand who thinks this stuff was funny. Did somebody really? I mean, the screenwriters obviously were probably laughing, but oh no, oh no. Okay. But okay, so we're 47 minutes in. We're 47 minutes into the movie. One thing I forgot to mention is at the 32-minute and 30-second mark, Gig Young, who plays Sonny Smith, who Kirk Douglas is on the phone with him a lot throughout this movie. He had a girl with him, no dialogue. That girl, believe it or not, was Eddie Williams. And Eddie Williams was, of course, most famous for being in one of my favorite movies of all time, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which, of course, I have my copy right here. And here she is. Here she is right here. Right there. That's Edie Williams in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. You're a groovy boy. I'd like to strap you on sometime. So she does appear in this movie uncredited at the 32-minute, 30-second mark. Okay, that's Edie Williams. But let's go ahead and talk about Gig Young, who was introduced at that moment. But now we're catching up to the point where we can talk about Gig Young, because I had heard the name before. I had no idea who the hell this guy was. But he was an actor. And he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his performances in Come Fill the Cup and Teacher's Pet. Okay. Admittedly, I've never seen those films, so I will not judge his performances in those. But it is clear that he had gotten some attention, and he finally won Best Supporting Actor for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Okay, I've never seen They Shoot Horses, Don't They? So I retract my hell. And because look, the truth of the matter is, Gig Young did nothing for me in this movie. In fact, I mean, he felt like a pawn. He felt sort of like with the chessboard earlier. I think that might have been a metaphor for how much all the characters in this movie are pawns. But Gig Young in this movie was just a nothing burger. He did absolutely nothing for me that I never would have suspected. And part of the reason I tend to wait to read about the backgrounds is because I want to be surprised. Like, really, this guy actually, he was nominated 3 times for Best Supporting Actor and won for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? For Love or Money is not his best work. Needless to say, it's just not his best work. So to make up for that, to make up for the fact that I actually asked who the hell this guy was, I will watch They Shoot Horses, Don't They? And if I like it, I'll actually watch the other movies he was nominated for. I promised you that. But in this movie, he did zero for me. Nothing. Here again, he was a complete blank slate to me in this. Just no charm. Nothing magnetic about him at all. He just felt like a very generic character that, here again was just to, bump off the main character. That's what it felt like. And here again, going back to how artificial this movie is. I mean, there's so many scenes of just people talking on couches, people talking on phones. It feels like a George Lucas prequel, a Star Wars prequel or something like that, where there's just nothing, there's no energy, there's no enthusiasm or initiative, there's nothing to get latched onto. This movie is a dearth of comic energy and inspiration and laughs. It's a black hole. It's a total black hole where, aside from Mitzi Gaynor's beauty, which this film does not deserve, it doesn't even deserve it, and it certainly doesn't deserve the other women as well. It doesn't deserve anybody. See, that's the thing. This is a script that should just have been put in the shredder. I honestly don't think that even the biggest stars in Hollywood would look at this and say, well, you know what? I mean, that's the thing. There's not a single memorable word of dialogue in this entire script. And, Mitzi can only do so much. Kirk can only do so much because he's so inexperienced in comedy. I really felt like that he was probably stretching everything he could just to make this work. And, I don't know if he was struggling so much as he just did not know how to, he wasn't given any kind of training beforehand until like how to make a joke or how to break down a joke or how to deliver something physical. It's like running into the dumbbells. We don't see him running into the dumbbells. We just hear it off screen. And then he comes out just holding his head like that. Like, where's the physical comedy? Where's the energy? It's just unbelievable to me. So here we have Gig Young and Julie Newmar. And I promise we're going to get to Julie Newmar. I promise we're going to get to her. But we have to talk about, continue with Gig Young. So going back, at Warner Brothers, his early work was uncredited or as Byron Barr. And his early films included Sergeant York, Dive Bomber, Navy Blues, One Foot in Heaven, The Tanks Are Coming. They Died with Their Boots On, which is actually a very good film about Little Bighorn and about General Custer, starring Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. It was actually the last film they worked on together. Very emotional for them. And also has Hattie McDaniel. Really good movie. Check it out. And You're in the Army Now. He had an uncredited bit part in the 1942 Bette Davis film, The Man Who Came to Dinner, saying in his distinctive voice, "How's the ice?" He was also in Captains of the Clouds and The Male Animal. and Warner's loaned him to Fox for the Mad Martindales. And in 1942, 6 months into his Warner Brothers contract, he was given his first notable role in the feature film The Gay Sisters as a character named Gig Young. Preview cards praised the actor Gig Young, and the studio determined that he should become Barr's stage and professional name. About the name change, Young later admitted to having some hesitancy, but I weighed the disadvantages against the advantages of having to stick it indelibly in the mind of audiences. There'd be no confusion with some other actor called Gig. His parts began to get better, a co-pilot in Howard Hawks' Air Force. Seen that, actually. That's also pretty good. That won an Academy Award for, I don't remember, but it did win an Oscar. And Betty Davis's love interest in Old Acquaintance. Young took a hiatus from his movie career and enlisted in the United States Coast Guard in 1941, where he served as a pharmacist mate until the end of World War II, serving in the combat zone in the Pacific. On Young's return from the war, he was cast as Errol Flynn's rival for Eleanor Parker in Escape Me Never. The film was directed by Peter Godfrey, who also helmed Young and Parker in The Woman in White, after which he left Warner's unhappy with his salary. Young began freelancing at various studios, eventually obtaining a contract with Columbia before returning to freelancing. He came to be regarded as a popular and likable second lead, playing the brothers or friends of the principal characters. In a 1966 interview, he said, quote, "Whenever you play a second lead and lose the girl," does he lose the girl in this movie? Whatever. "You have to make your part interesting, yet not compete with the leading man. There are a few great second leads in this business. It's easier to play a lead. You can do whatever you want. If I'm good, it means the leading man has been generous." Young was Porthos in MGM's successful The Three Musketeers in 1948. Then he supported John Wayne in Wake of the Red Witch at Republic and Glenn Ford in Columbia's Lust for Gold. Also at Columbia, he supported Rosalind Russell and Robert Cummings in Tell It to the Judge. Young had his first lead in a feature film in RKO in Hunt the Man Down, a film noir. He went back to support roles for Target Unknown, a war film at Universal, and Only the Valiant, a Western starring Gregory Peck. Young received critical acclaim for his dramatic work as an alcoholic in the 1951 film Come Fill My Cup with James Cagney, back at Warner Brothers, nominated for both Oscar and Golden Globe. Later gave Cagney a great deal of credit for his performance. He supported Van Johnson in the MGM comedy Too Young to Kiss. The studio liked Young so much that he was signed to a term contract. After supporting Peter Lawford in You for Me, Young was promoted by MGM to leading man for Holiday for Sinners. The film was a box office failure, however. More popular was The Girl Who Had Everything, where Young lost Elizabeth Taylor to Fernando Lamas. MGM loaned Young to Republic Pictures for City Never Sleeps, where he had the starring role as a disillusioned cop. In 2008, Martin Scorsese selected this film to open a Republic Pictures retrospective that he curated at New York's Museum of Modern Art, citing the movie's amazing energy and creativity. Back at MGM, Young had the lead in a 3D Western called Arena, which was a hit. He was the second male lead yet again to Michael Wilding in the Joan Crawford vehicle Torch Song. Then he left MGM. Quote, "I played terrible parts there," he later said. He decided to relocate to New York. And then he said, while he said he rarely performed in comedies until he appeared on Broadway in Oh Men, Oh Women, which ran 382 performances, Young recalled, "It was a big smash hit, but never helped change my type in Hollywood for quite some time. I still play dull, serious parts like Errol Flynn's brother, yet on Broadway, they offer me nothing but comedies." Well, this is a comedy, but here again, I agree. This is a very, very dull part in a very dull comedy. Didn't do him any favors, let's put it that way. So here again, apologize about using the word hell, but let's move on. So George Seaton saw Young on Broadway, cast him as a tipsy but ultimately charming intellectual and teacher's pet, starring Clark Gable and Doris Day. It earned Young a second Best Supporting Actor nomination. Young was promptly reunited with Day in the MGM comedy The Tunnel of Love, though still the second male lead after Richard Widmark. Also at MGM, he appeared with Shirley MacLaine and David Niven in Ask Any Girl. Young had a change of pace in a Clifford Odets drama starring Rita Hayworth, the story on Page 1 in 1959, although he was still second male lead to Andy Franciosi. I met William Wyndham in 1999. I told him, "You were very good in Echoes of a Summer, a Jodie Foster movie." He says to me, horrified, Echoes of the Summer. Good God. Wow. Like, no, you should have you should have mentioned Children of the Corn 4. That's what you should have been. You were awesome in that Children of the Corn 4, man. Okay, Young won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his role as Rocky, another alcoholic, dance marathon MC and promoter in the 1969 film They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Young had not been the choice of director Sidney Pollack, but his casting was mandated by the head of ABC Pictures, Young's former agent. According to his fourth wife, Elaine Williams, quote, what he was aching for as he walked up to collect his Oscar was a role in his own movie, one they couldn't finally call a gig Young movie. For Young, the Oscar was literally the kiss of death at the end of the line. Young himself had said to Llewellyn Parsons after failing to win in 1951, quote, so many people who have been nominated for an Oscar have had bad luck afterwards. However, when he finally won, Young called the Oscar the greatest moment of his life. Young had a good part in the popular Lovers and Other Strangers, also from ABC Pictures, toured in Nobody Loves an Albatross and Summer Stock. His worsening alcoholism began to cost him roles. Originally cast as the Waco Kid, Young collapsed on the set of the comedy film Blazing Saddles during his first day of shooting due to alcohol withdrawal and was fired by director Mel Brooks. Brooks would replace him with Gene Wilder. Young had a supporting role in Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, directed by Sam Peckinpah, and was in a horror movie called A Black Ribbon for Deborah. He was in the TV movies The Great Ice Ripoff and The Turning Point of Jim Malloy. Young was one of several names to star in The Hindenburg, guest starred on McCloud, Gibbsville, and his last role was the 1978 revised version of Game of Death, which was released nearly 6 years after the film's original star, Bruce Lee, died during production. And he passed away in 1978. Oh, wow. Now I do not retract the hell. I put the hell back. Okay. Since this movie is of little consequence, and okay, let me just read this. Here again, I should have read this beforehand. This is actually an instance where I should have read this beforehand. On October 19th, 1978, 3 weeks after his marriage to German magazine editor Kim Schmidt, the couple were found dead in their apartment at the Osborne in Manhattan. Police surmised that Young shot his wife and then himself. Young was found face down on the floor of his bedroom, a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol in his hand. His wife was found face down beside him. Young had apparently shot himself in the mouth, and the bullet exited the back of his head. His wife was shot in the back of the head. No suicide note was found. A motive for the murder of his wife and Young's suicide was never discovered. Police said that there was a diary opened on September 27th with "We got married today" written on it. The couple appeared to have died around 2:30 p.m. when shots were heard by a building employee, and their bodies were found 5 hours later. I was not expecting to read all this, trust me. Young was at one time under the care of the psychologist and psychotherapist Eugene Landy, who later had his professional California medical license revoked amid accusations of ethical violations and misconduct with patients. Now, it's funny. No, it's not funny, but you know at one point in this movie, Kirk Douglas actually refers to the boat that he's on as misconduct. And in response, Mitzi Gaynor actually says it sounds promising. Let me ask you ladies out there, would you go on the boat of a guy who named his boat Misconduct? Just a question. Just a question. It doesn't sound all that promising. It doesn't sound very sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't laugh. I wasn't expecting to read all this, though, and I had to break the tension. But okay, author Stephen King wrote the short story 1408, inspired by King's stay in room 1402 at New York's Park Lane Hotel, which was misrepresented by a hotel bellman as the location of Young's murder-suicide. Young's remains were taken to Beverly Hills for his funeral service, but he was later buried in the Greens Hill Cemetery in Waynesville, North Carolina. Young's daughter, Jennifer, launched a campaign. Oh, no, wait. Young's will, which covered a $200,000 estate, left his Academy Award to his agent, Martin Baum, and Baum's wife, Bernice. Young's daughter, Jennifer, launched a campaign in the early 1990s to get the award back from his agent and struck an agreement that she would get the award back upon the agent's death, which occurred in 2010. And he does have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Well, I'm taking everything back. I am not going to watch Gig Young's other films now. Yes, I have heard good things about They Shoot Horses, Don't They? But that's one film I've managed to avoid up until now, not watching, and I'm not in any hurry to see it. So, yeah. Wow. This and that just made this movie all the more worse to watch. To be perfectly honest, it made everything worse. Now, the actor right here talking to Mitzi Gaynor, and we're at the 1 hour 5 minute mark. 1 hour 5 minutes and 17 seconds. Right here behind Thelma Ritter. This is an actor by the name of William Bendix. Okay, now, I think lots of people, as well as I, when we think of William Bendix, we think of the fact that he starred in one of the worst movies ever made, called For Love or Money. No, I'm just kidding. Well, actually, I'm not. No, the Babe Ruth story. He actually played Babe Ruth in a 1948 film, not really based on Babe Ruth's life. I mean, it's actually pretty much all fiction. But he began his acting career at age 30 in the New Jersey Federal Theater Project. Made his debut in 1942. Played supporting roles in dozens of Hollywood films, usually as a warm-hearted gangster, detective, or serviceman. He began appearances in films noir, including a supporting role in The Glass Key and Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake in the leads. He soon gained attention after appearing in Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat as Gus, a wounded and dying American sailor. I remember him in Lifeboat. He was the top billed lead in The Hairy Ape, based on the Eugene O'Neill play, also starring Susan Hayward and Dorothy Common-Gore. Bendix's other film roles, including his portrayal of Babe Ruth in The Babe Ruth Story, a film roundly considered one of the worst sports biopics in film history, and Sir Sagramore, opposite Bing Crosby in A Connecticut Yankee in A King Arthur's Court in 1949, in which he took part in the trio Busy Doing Nothing. He played Nick the bartender in the film version of William Saroyan's The Time of Your Life, starring James Cagney. Bendix had appeared in the stage version, but in the role of Officer Krupp, a role played on film by Broderick Crawford, he was cast in The Blue Dahlia, 1946, appearing for the second time alongside Ladd and Lake. He also starred in a film adaptation of his radio program, The Life of Riley. On the 1952 television program This Is Your Life, hosted by Ralph Edwards, Bendix was claimed to be a descendant of the 19th century composer Felix Mendelssohn. Bendix played the lead in Rod Serling's The Time Element, a time travel adventure episode about a man who travels back to 1941 and unsuccessfully tries to warn everyone in Honolulu about the impending attack on Pearl Harbor. The program's success opened the doors for Serling's later series, The Twilight Zone. Bendix also appeared on The Ford Show, starring Tennessee Ernie Ford. He returned for a second appearance in 1959. In NBC's Wagon Train, Bendix played the captain of a sailing cargo ship who shanghaied Major Adams, Bill Hawks, and Charlie Rooster, forcing them to work on his ship. In the fall of '64, an American situation comedy starring Bendix and Martha Raye was scheduled to air on CBS, but due to Bendix's shaky health, the networks decided not to air the program. The action resulted in a lawsuit. Bendix saw advantages to both film and stage work. Films take tremendous pressure off. You can always reshoot a scene, but on the stage, you can work with a part, build it from performance to performance. As a professional, he was pragmatic and unsentimental about his career. His credo, he remarked, was, quote, save a buck or two and keep on acting. That's me. In an interview in 1960, he summed up his life, quote, I've had a long, varied, pleasant, eventful career. I don't hate anybody and I don't have any bitter thoughts. I started out without any advantages, but I've been lucky and successful and I've had fun. He married childhood friend Teresa Stefanati on October 22nd, 1927, and they were married until his death 37 years later in 1964. So he died only 1 year after For Love or Money. Died only 1 year. Yeah, so this was... He only did 3 other films after this. He did The Young and the Brave, Law of the Lawless, and Young Fury. Only 3 more films. Only 3 more films. So we are now at the 1 hour, 9 minute, and 30-second mark. 1 hour, 9 minute, and 30-second mark. And I'm not going to say anything about this scene, considering who's in it. So let me see. I think I talked about all the key cast members, all of them. They're all good. They're all good. They're all good. So my big problem with For Love or Money is just how it decides to leave Mitzi Gaynor high and dry in almost every one of her scenes, which renders her character, her quote unquote character, as being almost completely pointless, to be honest. I mean, like I said, this movie's idea of comedy is Kirk spanking the actor who later murdered his wife and himself. Yeah, not funny. I mean, it wasn't funny before I learned those facts, and it's not funny after. Just Kirk Douglas just spanking a guy that he's carrying around. It's just not funny. In the role of Marcia, there is one more cast member that needs to be talked about. That's Elizabeth McRae in the role of Marcia. During her childhood and throughout her teen years, McRae was encouraged by her mother to develop and refine her artistic talents, especially in drawing and painting portraits. Later, when she was in New York studying acting, the aspiring stage performer supported herself with money she earned through commissions for her artwork. Earl Wilson, another syndicated newspaper columnist, recounted McRae's early interest in art after interviewing her in October 1958 for a profile like Fayetteville girl has dual careers, actress, artist. North Carolina's Elizabeth McRae owes her dual professional life as an actress and artist to her mother and movie producer Otto Preminger. For several years, she supported herself by doing children's portraits. She played leads in the summer stock, and next month she plays her first TV role in the CBS show The Verdict Is Yours. By the latter half of 1958, McRae was in LA and auditioning again for a film role as well as TV productions. She continued her studies in theater at California Institute of the Arts. She tested again with Otto Preminger for the role of Mary Pilot in the crime film Anatomy of a Murder. Catherine Grant was chosen for that part by Preminger, but as noted by newspaper columnist Earl Wilson, McRae was cast in her first TV role, playing a witness in the courtroom series The Verdict Is Yours. Over the next several years, McRae began to perform increasingly in more substantive credited roles in televised dramas and sitcoms, ultimately appearing in a wide variety of popular weekly series, most of which are productions from the 1960s and 70s. Some of the programs from that period include 77 Sunset Strip, Burke's Law, Dr. Kildare, The Andy Griffith Show, Untouchables, Rawhide, General Hospital, Gunsmoke, in a recurring role as April on Gunsmoke, The Fugitive, Gomer Pyle, A Dream of Jeannie, Back to I Dream of Jeannie, The Virginian, Rhoda, Barnaby Jones, Kojic Mannix, and Petrocelli. McRae continued to perform on television throughout the 1980s, but by then in parts almost exclusively on other daytime soap operas, such as All My Children, Guiding Light, and Another World. From 1966 to 1969, McRae was repeatedly cast on the sitcom Gomer Pyle USMC in the role of Luann Poovey, the girlfriend of the series' title character. Her first of 15 appearances on that show in the 1966 episode Love's Old Sweet Song. Hal Humphrey, a reporter for the LA Times, featured McRae in his 1968 article about Gomer Pyle, in which he describes why the actress originally got the part and continued to appear on the series. Elizabeth McRae, who plays Gomer Pyle's girlfriend, auditioned for the role last season as a torch singer, and Gomer saw her and took pity on her. Elizabeth got the role for that one episode because she couldn't sing well enough either, and because she has a genuine Southern accent, which fit with Gomer's accent. In fact, she and Gomer got along so famously that it was decided that she make her recognize her from Gunsmoke, where she had a semi-regular role as the girlfriend of Festus Hagen some time ago. She also appeared in other TV series and quite a few movies, and is married to a screenwriter named Nedrick Young. Although the great majority of McRae's acting work was on TV, she was also cast in 9 feature films. Her earliest credited screen role is in the comedy Love in a Goldfish Bowl, released by Paramount Pictures in the summer of '61. She later that year performed as a supporting character in Everything's Ducky, a screenplay about a talking duck. What? John, I need verification on this. There's actually a movie called Everything's Ducky about a talking duck, starring Mickey Rooney. Oh, my God. Described in 1961 by Los Angeles Times critic Jeffrey Warren as a nonsense comedy, McRae plays Susie Penrose. Then from 62 to 64, while her television career continued to develop, she acted in 4 more Hollywood films: The Wild Westerners, Wild Is My Love, For Love or Money, and in the live-action animated comedy The Incredible Mr. Limpet. In the latter film, starring Don Knotts, she provided the voice of the character Ladyfish. After McRae's voice work for The Incredible Mr. Limpet, a decade passed before she performed in another film, the mystery thriller The Conversation. Oh, in April of 1974, yes. The Francis Ford Coppola classic with Gene Hackman. Wow. The production, directed by, proved to be the most critically acclaimed picture of the year, won the prestigious Palme d'Or at the 1974 Cannes Film Festival, received 2 British Academy Film Awards, and was nominated for 3 Oscars. McRae's association with The Conversation in her role as Meredith drew considerable attention to the veteran actress from moviegoers and critics. Film stills of her scenes with Hackman are featured prominently in 1974 previews and other contemporary coverage of the drama by Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and other American newspapers. In 2002, in a newspaper interview for the Fayetteville Observer, McRae reflected on her involvement in the award-winning production. She described Francis Ford Coppola as, quote, an intense director and one who was, quote, kind and open to actors building their characters. She also shared her experiences traveling to France to attend the ceremonies in Cannes, where she and other members of the cast were being, quote, treated like royalty. Following her performance in The Conversation, McRae continued to work predominantly in television, while she was cast in only 2 more feature films over the next 15 years. She portrays Mrs. Lundquist in the 1978 horror film The House of the Dead, and a news reporter in the 1989 production of Eddie and the Cruisers 2, Eddie Lives. Yeah, Eddie and the Cruisers 2, the infamous sequel where when you went to the video store, they only had the sequel. They never had the original because of rights issues or whatever. So there were a lot of people that never saw the first Eddie and the Cruisers. Wow, but that was her last film as a reporter. Yep. And so Elizabeth McRae, she is still with us. She's 87. Count that as another woman from this film who is still with us, ladies and gentlemen. Julie Newmar, Elizabeth McRae, and Mitzi Gaynor. They're all still with us. And like I said, there was the added novelty when I saw this for the first time 3 years ago. Kirk Douglas was still with us as well. But we are now coming upon the 1 hour and 18-minute mark. The 1 hour and 18-minute mark where Mitzi has a towel in her head. And let's see. Oh, yeah. At the 1 minute and 3 minute mark, the cab driver said, "What am I, a yo-yo?" And I was going to say, well, Gaynor's character is being treated in the film as a yo-yo, So I honestly just don't blame her. She's treated as a yo-yo by Kirk Douglas in this movie. And then, yeah, we just left the scene, the infamous scene in this movie. Well, not infamous because nobody's ever seen this. I don't think in years. But there's actually an orgasm joke where he has the champagne and he's with Mitzi and he starts to bubble up and everything. I never thought this film would actually go that far, but it does. And, it kind of makes sense because this was at the time when the production code was crumbling. Somebody let that go, obviously. Somebody let go the orgasm joke. But then there's Mitzi slapping Kirk Douglas, which is one of the high points of the movie. And then for some reason he fills her shoe with champagne. Here again, you're going to kill whatever energy there is in the film after an orgasm joke and Mitzi's slapping him across the face. We're going to just end the sequence with him filling a shoe with champagne. I don't get it. I don't understand who found this funny. I thought he was going to make a Cinderella joke, to be perfectly fair. I thought he was going to make a Cinderella joke, but no. He just poured champagne in it for no reason. I don't understand what the writers are joking about there, or what the point of that was. Here again, a lot of these scenes in this movie, and For Love or Money, a lot of these scenes just kind of end with not a punchline or a joke or a gag or a character moment. They just end with nothing happening on screen. And that's a huge problem because, especially from an editing standpoint. And this film was edited by Alma McCrory. 1956, she received an Academy Award nomination for editing The Bridges at Toko-Ri. She also edited Road to Zanzibar. She had dual responsibilities into each his own, acting in the film in addition to editing it. That's the one with Olivia de Havilland, which won her first Academy Award. She took on the acting role at the request of director Mitchell Leeson. Following that experience, she continued to act while editing, though not on the same films. She acted in The Emperor Waltz and Dear Wife while editing Bride of Vengeance and The Sin of Abbey Hart. McCrory won Eddie Awards from the American Cinema Editors for editing at The Bridges of Toko-Ri and Teacher's Pet. Okay. Well, the editing in this film is, I have to say, terrible because these scenes play out. They feel like they're twice as long as they could be. See, here again, For Love or Money is 108 minutes. That's a long time for a romantic comedy. And there's nothing. There's no bubbles in this movie whatsoever. Never saw Everything's Ducky, but can it be any worse than most of Mickey Rooney's 60s output? But you see, when you say that, when you ask that question, it makes me think of Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I have lots of other issues with Breakfast at Tiffany's, but he's the biggest one. It's when he gets on screen in Breakfast at Tiffany's, it is unbearable. I wanted to just turn the movie off at that point. It's just absolutely terrible, unwatchable, just unwatchable. So, okay. Now we're coming up on probably what is my favorite scene in the movie. And it's a scene where, first of all, Kirk Douglas is finally off screen for a certain amount of time. At this point, I had his fill. I just had my fill of his character, and I couldn't take it anymore. So thankfully, he's off screen for a while. And here we have Mitzi Gaynor actually given a chance to emote, actually given a chance to, after most of the film, yeah, not very funny, just not very funny. But pushing that production code, it's really pushing that production code in a few scenes. But the champagne bottle orgasm, I mean, even that seems just, almost desperation. It really feels like desperation at this point on account of the writers and the filmmakers to try to put something in this movie, but it certainly does not work. But here's the one scene in the movie where I was thinking to myself, you know what? this is Mitzi Gaynor's last movie. Okay, she basically retired from the screen at this point in 1963 when this film probably made a tiny profit. But here again, here she is right here acting her heart out. She's crying, and those look like real tears. To be perfectly honest, she's given one moment. She's given one moment. I mean, she dances a little bit later, sure, but she doesn't. She never sings in this movie. And this is the one moment where I said to myself, you know what? What could have been? If she had done other films after For Love or Money, she might have been able to, you know, you know, extend her acting skills to the point of where she might be nominated for an Oscar. But I started to think, you know what? With all these films, I watched them from the perspective of if I was a Mitzi Gaynor fan in the 1950s. You know, I started out with My Blue Heaven. I fell in love with her immediately, watched every single one of her films up until the last three after South Pacific. South Pacific is the top of the Himalayas. That is the peak, okay? It is the Mount Everest, okay? South Pacific is Mount Everest. There's nowhere to go but down. And down all the way to the bottom, okay? It's a real shame that she wasn't offered any other movies, or maybe she was, I don't know, where she was able to sing and dance. Because these last three movies that she did, Happy Anniversary 1959, Surprise Package 1960, and For Love or Money 1963, she's barely given a chance. I mean, she does have one singing moment, or actually, yeah, one singing moment in Happy Anniversary, one singing moment in Surprise Package, and that's a very repetitive song, which she does with I can't remember his name right now. No Coward. No Coward. There's actually a title song near the end. But in this movie, she dances very briefly with Kirk Douglas a little bit later, and that's it. And this is the only other scene where she's able to shine. And up until this point, when the whole movie was basically, leaving her high and dry, just leaving her just alone, and you get so frustrated at Kirk Douglas for constantly, answering the phone or walking out here or walking out there and just leaving her alone. You just, like, and then we keep following him when you rather spend time with Mitzi Gaynor, But like I said, that's the one scene. And I said to myself, you know what? Okay, she had a very successful career after this, doing these television specials. She had a very, very successful career on television and the stage, I believe in Vegas. A long, long career from 1963 to I think like the 90s to like the 2000s. She just danced and sang her way in many different costumes, mostly provided by Bob Mackie for these television specials. Very, very successful, very successful. And I don't think she looked back on her film career with any regrets. I honestly don't think that she did. What's funny is that, okay, so this DVD right here, this came out in 2008. And it's basically a compilation where there's an hour-long documentary about Mitzi and about her film career. They sum it up real quick. And then they talk about her TV specials. Let me tell you something. I had never seen these TV specials before. There's clips of them on YouTube, but I'd still never seen them before. Wow. Just my jaw dropped and became locked at one point when she did one number, the tribute to the American Housewife, for her 1973 television special. That is, without a doubt, one of the hottest musical numbers I've ever seen, executed for television or movies or for the stage. She was on fire. I mean, she's on fire in every television special. She nails every step perfectly. Her in these Bob Mackie costumes are dazzling. And on top of that, she's funny. She is a true comedian in every sense of the word. And just here again, it's so much more disappointing how she doesn't get that opportunity in really any of the 3 films she did after South Pacific, but this one in particular. One more time, at least Happy Anniversary and Surprise Package gave her something more to do than just act. And the camera was in love with her in Surprise Package, the lighting and everything. It illuminated her in that movie. Here, we just keep leaving her in a room. And it's just really sad that she is, like everybody else in this movie, is just wasted. Kirk Douglas is miscast. I understand, stretch things out a little bit, try a different genre. It didn't work. Tell you the truth, the only comedy I can think of that I liked Kirk Douglas in was Greedy. And I saw that in the theater, that movie with Michael J. Fox. Here again, the irony. There's another movie with For Love or Money with Michael J. Fox, but that's more of a ripoff of The Apartment. Whereas this is more of just a pillow talk clone, basically. So we're coming up on 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 30 seconds, and we have about 18 minutes left to go. There's Julie Newmar again. Yeah. But going back to this DVD, which pick up a copy. If you love Mitzi, pick up a copy of this, because what you get with this movie is that you get an hour-long documentary. You also get eight full-length glittering musical performances, one from each Mitzi special, an all-new featurette with Mitzi and Bob Mackie called Look Back in Fashion. Mitzi remembers the Beatles, which is an outtake. She did a couple performances where she actually played a child. She actually played a kid. She had a hat on and everything. When I first saw the clip, I didn't recognize her. I did not recognize her. She did several performances of this as the kid, basically. That's all she's known as. And she does sing. And what she said in the documentary was very illuminating, in that she was a very lonely child. And so this was kind of her tribute to lonely children of the world. And I found that actually very, very touching. Very, very touching. In honor of the 50th anniversary of Mitzi Gaynor's blockbuster film Rodgers and Hammerstein South Pacific, this is an all-new documentary that captures the creative excellence, the brilliant fusion of song and dance, the glamorous Bob Mackie costumes, and the nonstop excitement that were the hallmark of her glittering annual television events. For 10 years, Mitzi Gaynor's annual specials captured the imaginations of audiences the world over. Now, for the first time in 3 decades, experience the groundbreaking Emmy-winning performances choreographed by some of the most influential forces in the world of dance. Peter Gennaro, Danny Daniels, Robert Sidney, Tony Scimarli, and including newly taped interviews with Miss Gaynor, Bob Mackie, Kristen Chenoweth, the star of Wicked and Pushing Daisies, Carl Reiner, the Dick Van Dyke Show, and who was also in Happy Anniversary with Mitzi Gaynor, as well as Kelly O'Hara, who played South Pacific on Broadway. She was Nettie on Broadway. Rex Reed and rare photos and footage from Gaynor's personal archive that illuminate the behind-the-scenes stories and impact of her landmark television events. It also has late show movie parody, full-length comedy sequence from Mitzi's 1968 special, Mitzi and Friends Salute Sondheim's Company, and this is all digitally remastered in 5.1 stereo. Now, from what I understand, this was originally supposed to be a box set. It was originally supposed to be a box set of all her television specials, and that didn't happen. Instead, we have this truncated version. Everything added together, it's about 2.5 hours, and it's all wonderful. And after I saw this, I thought, I want to see those full-length television specials. There's only clips on YouTube. And from some reason, from when I did my research from another YouTube channel, I got the idea that PBS was doing something for a while with those Mitzi specials. And the last I heard, of course, Mitzi Gaynor just turned, I keep forgetting, is it 92 or 93? I need to double check. Okay, she just turned 92. I was right. She just turned 92 years old. She stopped doing shows about 6 or 7 years ago due to her legs. And I can imagine after, 67, 70 years of dancing, it's going to take its toll eventually. And so she obviously doesn't do stage shows anymore. I think she only does mostly interviews, but her public appearances have been rare. But it does kind of explain. I mean, when you watch For Love or Money when you watch this movie, it perfectly explains why she went down this route. And also for the fact that she was in a very loving marriage. She was in a very successful marriage with a very loving husband who supported her, who stood by her every second of the way throughout her post-film career. And like I said, 100%, I don't think that she had any regrets when she left the screen. I'm sure there were a lot of people in the 60s that were disappointed that she never made another film. But at the same time, you know, I completely understand and respect her decision. In fact, I love her decision. Here again, you watch Happy Anniversary and Strange and Surprise Package and For Love or Money, and you think, yeah, no regrets. No regrets leaving the film business behind. She had her calling in Vegas and she had her calling on television. So if you're a Mitzi fan, pick this up. I implore you. Do not pick up For Love or Money. Yes, I do have the DVD For Love or Money, and there's no extra features on it, by the way. This is the only way you can watch For Love or Money because it's not available streaming. And can I just say the mirror effect of Kirk Douglas on the cover here? It just, that shit-eating grin, it just makes me want to punch him in the face. You know, it's just, I cannot stand the poster with that mirror image of his expressions. And of course, they're the three women right there, Julie Newmar and Mitzi Gaynor. You know, I just, yeah. This DVD isn't worth anything but on the level of a coaster. You know, use it to put it in, you know, yeah. I'm just going to try to sell it on eBay. That's all I'm going to do. But it's just a shame that this is available on DVD. And there's other Mitzi films that are not available on DVD. And the same thing with this, you know, but this is as good as it gets. Pick this up. Pick this up instead of For Love or Money. And here she is dancing right here in this gold dress. Really beautiful. But, you know, too little, too late. Too little, too late. Now, and I was pondering, why is it that her television specials didn't get the deluxe treatment that they were supposed to get? And the truth of the matter is, my theory behind this, I mean, I have to give credit to Paul Mavis, who used to write for DVD Talk, one of my favorite writers. And I think this kind of answers the question, but because here again, and in the last 10 minutes of this commentary, I will be going over all of Mitzi's movies that are available on physical media, which isn't extensive. But why is it that there isn't any demand for Mitzi's movies? I mean, you know, and I think this kind of answers the question in a kind of really sad way. But Paul Mavis wrote a review on a full season of Alice. Now, Alice was a television show based on the Martin Scorsese film Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And what I read here is, I think, very profound. I mean, it made me think, and it's like, you know, it makes perfect sense. It does make perfect sense. But, quote, I haven't seen Alice since it went off the air in the mid-'80s, and I'm pretty sure I didn't catch many episodes past this fourth season when Polly Holiday was, quote-unquote, kicked upstairs and fired off the show. Sitting down to write this review, I started off wondering about a familiar query of mine pertaining to the loss of public recognition of once hugely popular vintage TV shows. How could a series like Alice, that ran for a remarkable 9 seasons, long by any sitcom standard, many of those seasons highly rated in the Nielsen's, disappear so completely from the consciousness of today's viewing public? Growing up as a typical TV addict in the early 70s, I was as familiar with those old shows from the 50s like I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners, as well as then current ones. How did something so popular like Alice then get lost in the airwaves, leaving almost no mark on the pop culture radar of today's viewers? The answer, I fear, is a depressing one for viewers who care about these things. All that old crap is getting jettisoned by today's consumers, oftentimes forgetting the fact that I'm in a TV and movie, quote, historical bubble, purposely watching older titles at the expense of newer stuff, I continually catch myself surprised when I interact with someone younger who not only has absolutely no idea who I'm talking about, when I mention Archie Bunker or Mary Richards or Napoleon Solo or Buzz Murdoch and Todd Stiles or Maud Finley or Ben Cartwright or Fred Sanford or Richard Kimball. Well, Richard Kimball, I think more people know about him, or Richie Cunningham, or even Gilligan, but who also doesn't particularly care to know about them either. And with that disinterest comes an ominous loss of context. If you didn't grow up watching reruns of the syndicated Abbott and Costello show, then you might go around blithely thinking it's equally amusing ripoff Seinfeld is one of the most startlingly original sitcoms in television's history, when it is most decidedly not. I agree with him, too. Of course, availability of a title greatly affects recognition. 60-year-old I Love Lucy and 20-year-old Seinfeld are still well-known icons to newer viewers because they're always on. But there's no denying the fact that mainstream television and its stations, with their now splintered, fragmented audiences, want a steady, reliable conduit for older shows, when it was only home video visual media game in town, just as interested in keeping iconic titles like Brady Bunch or The Twilight Zone or The Waltons front and center and quote-unquote alive for new viewers, let alone doing the same for something like Alice. He's one of my favorite writers, and that is one of the most profound things I've ever read. And I read that when it was published like 10 years ago. And so it perfectly makes sense in this situation in terms of Mitzi Gaynor's status as a star. I mean, it's wonderful she's still with us, and yet it's very, very sad that her filmography isn't available as it should be. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, Fox put out a Marilyn Monroe box set. Why can't we have a Mitzi Gaynor box set? I think she's earned it. I think she's absolutely earned it. Like even the lesser known Fox titles, even stuff like Three Young Texans, or even, There's No Business Like Show Business. Well, that's Monroe, but no, Three Young Texans, or what's the other one? Down Among the Sheltering Palms, stuff like that. Why not just make it available? I just don't understand. But of course, now that Fox is owned by Disney and the library is locked in a vault probably for the rest of time, we will probably never see any of those titles on physical media again. This scene right here where Kirk Douglas just jumped off the boat and there's all this fog. It's like, man, this movie could really use a giant squid. It could really use a colossal squid right about now, just to give us something. That's a reference to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which of course starred Kirk Douglas. But so to close out this commentary, because we have approximately six minutes, we have 6 minutes left to go in For Love or Money. So this is basically the full Mitzi Gaynor physical media report. First and foremost, we do have My Blue Heaven, which is available on a marquee musical DVD from 20th Century Fox back in the day. This is available for a reasonable price on eBay, as well as Bloodhounds of Broadway, which she made in 1952 with Scott Brady. And this is one of my favorite of all of Mitzi's films. This is another marquee musical DVD that you should pick up along with My Blue Heaven. Now we get to some disappointment here, because even though Fox had put out Golden Girl, they put it out in the series called Fox Cinema Archives, which is basically their version of a Warner Archive, or there's a Columbia Classics line, where the movies like For Love or Money that have no support or popularity whatsoever, and they're completely forgotten and anonymous and obscure, those movies get thrown on DVD. And this Golden Girl transfer is one of the most depressing things I've ever seen in my life. There is a version on YouTube. It is a lot better than this. I don't know where Fox screwed up when it came to this, but it was unwatchable. The colors smeared, the pixels smeared. Basically, it was basically so unwatchable. And this is endemic of how Mitzi's films have been treated as a whole by the studios, especially 20th Century Fox. Now, We're Not Married and Irving Berlin's There's No Business Like Show Business are both available. Well, sorry. Business is available on Blu-ray, no extra features. And We're Not Married is available on a DVD with no extra features. The I Don't Care Girl was given a Fox Cinema Archives treatment like Golden Girl, and that's why I refused to buy it, because I don't trust the quality on there. Then we get to Paramount, where Anything Goes was put on DVD. But Paramount never put out Birds and the Bees and The Joker is Wild. And I even said on my Anything Goes commentary, I would love to see Paramount just put out those 3 films in a Mitzi Gaynor box set with bonus features. I think she's earned it. I think that, I think she deserves a box set just as much as Marilyn did. That may sound controversial. You know what? I don't think that is controversial at all. I don't think it is. Mitzi Gaynor earned her stripes. She reached the top of Mount Everest. And sure, she made a few films that are not very well liked or remembered, and are just forgettable compared to her more memorable ones. But, I think that she's earned it. I think that she has earned some kind of something more than just this right here, which is wonderful. And every Mitzi Gaynor fan needs to pick up a copy of this before it's gone forever. And that's pretty much it. Well, except for, of course, South Pacific is on Blu-ray. And it's a pretty good Blu-ray, too. I mean, there's a lot of Fox Blu-rays out there of South Pacific, even though it's not available for streaming anywhere. I realized that before the South Pacific commentary that this is not available anywhere for streaming. And that is a tragedy. That is a sin and a shame. Yes, I'm going to go there. And then finally, of course, my favorite Mitzi Gaynor movie is available on Blu-ray, courtesy of Warner Archive, called Les Girls. And this is going to be the very last commentary that I do. It's my favorite Mitzi Gaynor movie, so guess what? It's going to be the closing commentary to this series of commentaries in tribute to Mitzi Gaynor and the films that she made. But yeah, I can't wait to get to Les Girls. And just to let everybody know, the other 6 commentaries will be next weekend. And I'm going to be spending the large part of next week preparing by reading books that will help me do movie commentaries. This is what I'm reading in preparation for Golden Girl, because it's about the entertainer Lotta Crabtree. I'm also going to be reading Take Care of My Little Girl, a book by Peggy Gooden about a sorority sister. And this was made into a movie in 1951 that I still have yet to get to, but I'm looking forward to it. And then finally, last but not least, and this was the last thing I picked up, and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm torn. Since I liked the movie, I decided to pick it up, but this is a book based on, this is The Joker is Wild, and this is the thickest book, as you can see, so this is going to take a while to read, but of course this was made into the movie with Frank Sinatra. And we finally have reached the end of For Love or Money. We close out the end, a Universal International picture. That is the end of For Love or Money, ladies and gentlemen, from 1963. A mostly worthless movie, aside from a few people that are in the movie as well. And I think we covered everything that the commentary needed. I think that's it. With the last thing, I'm going to close out in saying that at the 1 hour and 28-minute mark, there's a scene at that moment when they leave the room and Thelma Ritter just like shakes her head. You're just waiting for a line or some kind of word. Nothing. Nothing to say whatsoever. And I think that's kind of a perfect metaphor for the whole movie, is that this movie has nothing to say. It has nothing to say. It has nothing to do. It has no purpose. It has, well, look, and here again, I didn't read the reviews at IMDb because there are people that found this movie funny. But comedy being subjective, I did not find this funny. And that is the biggest insult that comedy could make. And I thought everybody from Julie Newmar to Mitzi Gaynor to Kirk Douglas was wasted. So, but at the same time, to close out this commentary, if you want the DVD that I have, shoot me a message. Shoot me a message on Twitter X, DM, say, hey, I want that DVD copy. I'll send it to you in the mail free of charge. I'll pay for the shipping. I'll pay for the shipping. Just go to at Stone Gasman at Twitter X. Say, I want the For Lover Money DVD. Give me your address. I promise I'll send it to you and pay for the shipping. Because I will never see this again. And if I don't sell it on eBay or if nobody requests it, then I'll probably just throw the DVD away and just save the case and use it for something else. So that's my one and only offer. But here again, there's not a lot. I mean, I wasn't a fan of it. There's going to be a lot of people that won't like it either. Unless you're, even for a Mitzi Gaynor completist like me, I do not want For Lover Money. So at any rate, so that is our commentary for tonight. So you all have a great evening. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, John.